Welcome to the reading part 2 of the story The Shoes of My Sensei. The narrator in this reading is going to visit the POW camp. Let us read. Now, reading his letter, I thought he must be feeling desperately low in his detention camp. I owed it to him to visit him. Returning his shoes was no problem. They were too big for me and I was planning to sell them. But would I get blacklisted if I went to visit the enemy? There would be a register to sign, a record of my visit. What future use might they make of it? My fears were groundless, but to a teenager who grew up in a Kempatire world, they were very real. Stories of wartime atrocities were being circulated, and the general feeling was that vengeance was about to be exacted on the Japanese and all who had collaborated with them in any way. Why go? Why take the risk? Close friends asked me. Look at the terrible things those Japanese did. He was a bloody Japanese too, wasn't he? Was he? A small voice in me kept reminding me that he was an understanding man, one who had been truly good to me. I switched off that voice. Instead, I wrote him lies. His shoes had been sold. I was studying hard for my exams and had no time. I even had no transport to his camp. For weeks, I suffered remorse over what I had done. Then, one day, I saw in the streets a stranger, an old man, white hair, all straggly, dragging one useless foot along. And I remembered someone whose feet needed shoes. I cycled to the camp with those shoes. Outside the camp gates, standing before the British soldiers on duty, I sweated, cold sweat, when I bowed to them, as I had done to the Kempatite, showed them my sensei's letter, and signed my particulars into their formidable book. As they escorted me in, I hugged the shoes tightly for courage. The camp guards took me to the canteen tent to wait. There were a dozen other people already there, visitors and prisoners. I almost cried when I saw my sensei. He had grown thin and pale and looked depressed and withdrawn. At first, he did not recognize me or did not want to. He did not look me in the eye. When he finally spoke, he was polite but not warm, speaking only brief words. I held out the shoes to him. He did not take them. I put them on the table before us. He confessed that I was scared. I confessed that I was scared and that I had not been truthful to him in my letter. He said nothing. So, the narrator switches off the small voice of conscience, who did not want to believe what his friends said. Don't go, he is from the enemy. He is a bloody Japanese. But one day, when he saw an old man barefoot on the streets, struggling to walk, he thought that his sensei's feet required shoes. He could not ignore The little voice inside him, the voice of his conscience, he felt guilty. He felt guilty that he had been lying to him all the time. He said that he had sold the shoes. He also said that they were too big for him. He had no time. He was preparing for exams. He even said that he had no transport to the camp. But he couldn't help it. So he cycled his way to the camp one day. He went inside. He's nervous. He's scared. And the little voice inside him is prickly. So he hugs his sensei shoes for courage. As soon as he saw his sensei, he almost cried. He felt emotional. But the sensei had changed. He had grown thin, pale, depressed, and withdrawn. And he was not at all warm in his meeting. He was polite, but not warm. He spoke very little. The narrator confesses. He feels sorry, saying that he was scared. And now, when he tells the truth, the sensei says nothing. Think about it. Why is the sensei quiet? What is the metaphor of the shoes? Is the narrator selfish or sensible? What helps, selfishness or sensibility, in human relationships, especially in disruptive times? Think about it. Thank you.